Great. Hello. My name is Emily Coralyne, and I'm a life coach with Going Forth Coaching, but also a virtual assistant with media for The Great Turning. And my work is heavily influenced by the work of Joanna Macy, who first started, not first started, but really picked up in her activism and teachings around nuclear disarmament and disparate empowerment work to really empower people around taking action against nuclear war and nuclear weapons and nuclear waste. And today I'm interviewing a dear friend and close ally, Diane Swords, who is the chair of the Nuclear Free World Committee of the Syracuse Peace Council. And she's been organizing against nuclear war, nuclear waste, and nuclear arms for over 40 years. And so I just really want to honor Diane for all of the work that she's done. And today I'm interviewing her because on January 22nd of this year, the UN nuclear weapons ban treaty comes into force. But the United States, its allies, and other nuclear armed states have refused to take part or to sign it. And so I have a lot of questions about that. Also, as an activist and someone who cares about the future of our world and existential threats to our humanity and to our planet and all other beings. So I just want to ask Diane, what are some statistics about nuclear weapons here in the United States, and where are they manufactured? How much is spent per year on developing nuclear weapons in the United States? Are they still tested in the United States or elsewhere? What's going on?
Okay, first I really need to say, because of the introduction you gave, that it's really Joanna Macy's work that makes it possible for me to continue doing this kind of thing where, you're looking in the face of annihilation all the time. And yet, not all the time, because I feel like, as Joanna Macy taught, once you go through the despair, you become empowered to do something about it, and that makes it possible to keep going. It's not that you're ever done with that, but makes it possible to keep going. Mm-hmm. So in answer to your question, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017 for its work on the nuclear ban treaty. And our Peace Council work and many, many other groups contributed to that. And they compile a lot of great statistics, so you can find data on their website. This is international data. And they, their latest figures say that in 2019, the US spent $35.4 billion on nuclear weapons. And that's the nuclear nations overall spent $138,699 a minute on nuclear weapons. Absurd when you think about the things that are not getting funded in our communities and in our world. Mm-hmm. And as far as who where these weapons are made and who these investments go to, there are many companies that are engaged in creating nuclear weapons all over the world. And one other astonishing number is that in the most recent year, top companies involved in the nuclear weapons industry invested over $748 billion US by 325 financial institutions in 1 year, or 2 years, January 2017 to January 2019. And ICAN and its campaign, Don't Bank on the Bomb, chronicles who these companies are. They also have a hall of fame of companies that have stopped creating nuclear weapons and components for nuclear weapons.
Can you list some of the companies that are still manufacturing?
Yes, and some of them will be quite familiar to people, I think. Certainly Boeing, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Honeywell, Bechtel. These are familiar names. This is on a list of the top 20. Some of the other names aren't as familiar to me. They may be to other folks. Alliant is another one, Babcock and Wilcox. But so and pressure from citizens has helped make this kind of change, but it's desperately needed because the threat of nuclear war is real and growing.
Right.
Global tensions are rising. The US in the last 4 years has pulled out of critical arms control treaties. And so we're encouraged that someone who has supported some nuclear weapons reduction is coming into the presidency, but he's going to need a lot of pressure and support if he's going to go in the right direction, because there's huge money behind supporting these instruments.
Absolutely. Like when I think about Honeywell or Lockheed Martin, these are household names. I mean, we have Lockheed Martin here in Syracuse. Honeywell also has been historically here in the manufacturing industry. And Honeywell, these are things that we like thermostats that we put in our house, or other household items are also manufactured by these companies producing nuclear war. Just to give people context of like the companies are vast across industry and household goods, but also war. And that just blows my mind. And so I want to also ask, like, there's this nuclear weapons ban treaty. But what are the parameters of that? Like, what does it do actually?
Okay, so the ban treaty is a major movement in the right direction. What it does is stops countries that are signed on to it. Now, this does not include the US, but they cannot test, produce, have nuclear weapons on their soil, transport nuclear weapons or components through those countries. And so even though the nuclear nations have not signed on, the countries that have signed on to the treaty and ratified the treaty are slowing down the process for the nuclear nations. So the treaty has huge effects, and also gives us a lot of leverage to push for more, for example, for more banks and more companies to take their money out of nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. Great. And something that I learned recently, also, and that just speaks to the how delicate this issue is and how scary it is that the U.S. agency managing nuclear weapons was hacked just a couple of weeks ago. People probably heard about the news that the federal government was hacked by whoever. We don't know who it was, but that's scary given that we're already in a very delicate, like apocalyptic situation with coronavirus that affects everyone everywhere, and that technology is taking off in really big ways. And cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, autonomous technologies makes these weapons accessible to hackers or to like other countries who are not friendly with the United States, for example. And to think like, right, coronavirus affects everyone. Also, just one nuclear weapon would affect everyone, everywhere. And these are like unarguable reasons why we should be concerned and why we should ban nuclear weapons, but and why we should take this seriously. And I want to ask you, like, can you share your thoughts about why nuclear weapons are such an existential threat, like besides what I just shared?
Absolutely. And I'll add one thing to what you just shared, maybe actually two things, because people probably remember not too long ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, there was an error, but it said it was a warning that nuclear weapons had been launched and were
Yeah.
attacking Hawaii.
Right. I remember.
And if it hadn't been dispelled really quickly, there could have been a launch, because nuclear weapons are on hair trigger alert. There's very little time between a warning and when they're supposed to be launched in order to, you know, yeah. So not only that, but on January 6th, days ago, we had our representative in Congress checking with the Joint Chiefs of Staff to find out if there was a way to get nuclear weapons out of Trump's hands, because the president of the US has the sole authority to launch nuclear weapons. And that has been the case. People have been trying to change it. I hope this scares us into changing it. But we're not out of the woods yet with that threat. And I just have to say one other thing, because I think there's, since the 80s, when nuclear weapons were so clearly in people's minds, I think people have lost the recognition of how, we've used the word apocalyptic, but I think there's a consciousness that says, well, it's another kind of war, or maybe it's a bad weapon, but it's still, just one of those weapons. But nuclear weapons have the ability to destroy the planet. If a very small nuclear exchange could cause a cloud of smoke and dust and debris so dark that it would prevent the sun from reaching the earth for months and destroy crops and cause starvation of those people who didn't die of the radiation. And we've seen pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and how horrific that explosion and heat blast and firestorm and aftermath were. That would seem small in comparison to a situation where 9 countries have nuclear weapons. So I think we have to go through that feeling of, oh my God, how can we possibly be living in a world that threatens this, before we can think clearly about, so what do we do about it?
Yeah. And you've been organizing for this for a long time, right? And 40 years is a long time to like move things or get things done, but I can also imagine that there's challenges, because it's such a, like, it's militarized and secure. And what are some of the challenges you've confronted in organizing people against this very existential and severe threat to humanity?
Well, and I think for some people, and for myself, it feels like too much to think about. It's just horrible to think about. And the only way I can deal with it is to think about the things that I can do about it and be doing as much as I can. But there's also the feeling that, well, it's, leave it to the experts. It's such a big thing. We need to have people who know all the detail about nuclear weapons dealing with this. But in fact, we know enough. Every individual listening to this knows enough to know that nuclear weapons can destroy the planet. What more do we need to know? Should we increase the risk more, or should we be decreasing it? That seems like a no-brainer, right? Another thing that divides us and keeps us from organizing together is this concept, which I hear over and over again, that, okay, poverty and racism are issues that people of color should be attending to, and nuclear weapons are issues that white people attend to. And it's just not true. People of color have done tremendous labor against nuclear weapons that often goes unrecognized. And we desperately need to be working together on poverty, on weapons, on racism. And the fact is that it's the message from the power structure that reinforces this myth so strongly that people on all sides of it tend to think it's true, because but it benefits the power structure because that keeps us from organizing together. So that's another thing that we really need to overcome and work together on all those issues. And that's what Martin Luther King talked about with the triple evils of racism, militarism, and economic destruction. And we've got to get back to that. There is the Poor People's Campaign reinvigorated today. Mm-hmm. And the last myth, which I think is really crucial to talk about, is the myth that we're powerless against this.
It can certainly feel that way. Also, as an organizer, like, okay, like it's so big and it's like behind these closed doors, and like I felt that apathy for sure. And so what then? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of campaigns, of course, working on this issue. I feel the one that I get most excited about, because it feels most doable, most achievable, and very concrete, is called Back from the Brink. And there's a website, preventnuclearwar.org. And it's basically 5 steps that we can work on legislatively in the US, here in the US, to try to reduce the risk of nuclear weapons and eventually abolish nuclear weapons. The first step is to renounce first strike. Now, you might think that it's absurd to think that the US would launch a nuclear strike. Oh no, we have those weapons just to defend ourselves. But the Trump nuclear posture review has made it even more, has added more instances to the list of instances in which we might launch a nuclear strike. And the US has never renounced first strike, but it's become more and more part of the policy. Second, and there is legislation to renounce first strike that we can work on, and it has been building. And now with the new administration, we have to dive in really fast, because things will change in 2 years. We've got to get in those first 100 days and grab the chance to renounce first strike. The second thing that has become really clear, but that's part of the Back from the Brink campaign and has been under consideration for a number of years, is ending the sole unchecked authority of a US president to launch a nuclear attack.
Yes, please.
I think that goes without saying under current circumstances, but nobody should have that authority, no matter how much we think they're intelligent and capable. It's too much for anyone. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the Hawaii instance, and that is really relevant to the third item in Back from the Brink, taking nuclear weapons off hair trigger alert, because again, the time is way too short for real consideration and could cause an accidental nuclear war. There have been instances where balloons flew in the radar, and it was thought for a period of time that it was a nuclear attack. Or birds flying in a certain way that weren't detected as birds. So too many possible accidents. We have to take these weapons off hair trigger alert. Yeah. And then, so each of these is huge, but each of them has specific legislation that we can work on. Canceling the plan to replace the entire nuclear arsenal with so-called enhanced weapons. And that has already begun, and we need to stop that train. And the fifth thing is actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate their arsenals. That is the ban treaty. Mm-hmm. And so what we need to do is continue work on all of these things, and they will all contribute to supporting the ban treaty. And at the same time, working on trying to get the US to ratify the nuclear ban treaty.
Yeah. And so all of these things are legislative, and I'm wondering then, what can people do at a local level to get involved? Like, what are the steps that someone who doesn't know about this issue, that feels moved by this talk or by something that they find out about it, like what are the concrete actions that they can take this month or in the near future about
Yeah,
this?
and that's another thing that I love about the Back from the Brink campaign, because it has a strategy to build from individuals up to municipalities and into our legislative
Yeah.
bodies at the state level and the federal level and internationally. So
Mhm.
individuals can endorse the Back from the Brink campaign. That's a small step. It's just putting your name on a document, and you can do that by going to preventnuclearwar.org. That's a small step. The next step is to work with any organization that you are part of. And in Syracuse, there are a number of community organizations, environmental organizations, of course, groups like the Peace Council, CNY Solidarity in Syracuse, which is a campaign for sane government policies, basically, that started 4 years ago. Many religious congregations have endorsed in Syracuse and around the country. You can look on the list and see if your organization or one like it has already endorsed, because that helps get more organizations to endorse. But you can go to your congregation, to your community group, and talk to them about what this campaign means and get them to sign their name to it, and move towards educating their people more highly on it.
Yeah. And I
Um,
just want to say something, like
yeah,
to this point, right? Like, as an anti-fracking organizer in Central New York, that was a big part of my work, is gaining like popular support, supportive businesses, because businesses and organizations matter and have weight. Like, if you're part of an organization or you own a business, like your voice also matters. And as individuals, when we are part of those organizations, then we can have a more collective voice for these issues that matter to us. And so even if you're like an individual like me and going around to businesses or coffee shops, and bringing a letter and having them sign it, and then sharing that with the Back from the Brink campaign or the Syracuse Peace Council, like these are little things that you can do when you're just out getting coffee in the morning and asking around to the businesses that you support locally if they would support this bigger thing. And I found a lot of businesses in the region are very are with that and with the people and support the community in those kinds of ways. So just want to encourage people to really take that step, with any organization that they're a part of. Can make a big difference.
absolutely. And in Syracuse, the Common Council has endorsed it and the mayor has endorsed it. So in communities all over the country need to be looking at that. And there are numerous ones you can find listed on the website. But if yours is not on there, get after them. And and then on up the legislative ladder, and eventually getting to our representatives in Congress and in the Senate. And of course, the Senate is the body that has to ratify a treaty. So we should be working from day one of the new administration on getting our senators to sign on to it.
Yeah.
And Senator Gillibrand in New York has been very favorable. So we've got a starting place, and we need to get her to actually endorse and get all our representatives to
Yeah.
endorse.
And for those who are still with us, all the things that we are saying right now will be listed in the comments, and are also all available on the links of the different campaigns that we've been speaking about. So you can do your research and go deeper into any work that you want to do on this issue.
And
Yeah,
please contact the Peace Council if you want to get involved through the local Nuclear Free World Committee.
Mm. And is there anything else that you want to add around action steps for people?
Well, I think that the point is that we need to be working together with other people.
Mm.
And it's so important, and it's crushing if you think about it alone. But when you see the brilliance and commitment of the people who are working on it, it's really encouraging, and our energy adds together.
Beautiful. And with that, Diane and I want to give an invitation to anyone who's listening to this, that we will be hosting a Work That Reconnects workshop on this topic of nuclear weapons and nuclear war, nuclear waste on Friday, January 29th at 4 p.m. GMT, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and 8 a.m. Pacific Time, to teach more people, or to teach people more about the Nuclear Weapons Treaty, to feel what we feel about this issue together, and get clear about what we can do to have an impact and leave having action steps together. And this is 1 week after the nuclear weapons treaty ban goes into place for many other countries around the world, but not ours in the United States. So we still have a lot of work to do. And I just want to thank Diane for all of her work, and please join us, and not to be missed, this opportunity to be facilitated in the Work That Reconnects, but also to be with a 40-year anti-nuclear activist who has done amazing work and has amazing thinking about all of this. And yeah, so I'll post some things in the comments. Thank you so much, Diane. It's been it's such a treasure to have you in this
So
world.
much, Emily. It's just great to be working together on this.
Yeah, thank you.